Hi guys, I'm going to try to do a video with the summary lessons. I'll start off with this one. You have this quadratic function. It's in factored form and they're asking you to find the zeros. That's essentially the x-intercepts of this graph. So let's add that over here. And if we want to find the x-intercepts, we know that on our graph, the y value should actually be equal to 0. So let's write let y be equal to 0. And then when we make that substitution, we would have this product of these two brackets. And then if you remember that this is the 0 product, so that if I multiply this and this together, it's supposed to be equal to 0. So the two possibilities that we would have is that we want to make this first term equal to 0, or we can make this second term equal to 0. So we would split this up, and then we would write these two expressions. 2x is equal to 0, and then we would write x minus 3 is equal to 0. And we would solve for each one of these x's. So for this first one, I would technically divide both sides by 2 because it's being multiplied. So when we do that, this one's always the more simple case because anything with 0 in the numerator, we're going to have that the first x value is going to be equal to 0. This one, if I want to isolate for x, we're going to add 3 to both sides. And then the second x value or x-intercept is going to be equal to positive 3. So my x-intercepts, when y is equal to 0, it would read as 3, 0. And the second one would read as 0, 0. And we can check this on Desmos to see if this is actually the correct graphed function. So you can go to Desmos. So this is your summary wrap-up. On Desmos, it looks something like this. If I try to type in the function, so I would have y is equal to 2x. I'm going to put a bracket because right now this is just a linear function. And then I would write x minus 3. And then you can see here that this is our graphed parabola. I can see that the a value is equal to a positive a. So I know it's actually opening up. If I take a look at this graph, I can see that the x-intercepts, if I click here and here, those are the actual two values that we got. So 0, 0, and 3 and 0. So that confirms that. So let's try now part B. I'll move this to the next one. So for part B, we have the same idea. It's written in factored form again. If I want to find the x-intercepts, we would say that y is going to be equal to 0. So let's write that in. So let's write let y is equal to 0. Again, we're just going to substitute it in over there. So 0 is equal to negative 2, x plus 4, and then I have x minus 3. And basically what they're saying is that this first term, this second bracket, and this third bracket, that if I multiply all of these, it should be equal to 0. So the first thing that I would want to do is isolate or get rid of this negative 2. If this is being multiplied, you would divide this whole side by negative 2. I would divide this side by negative 2. And then again, this just results into positive 1. So I would have x plus 4. I would have x minus 3. And if I simplify that left side, 0 divided by negative 2, we would just get 0. So this is the same thing that we had before. We have these two products, and again, either this is going to be equal to 0 or this is going to be equal to 0. So let's try to find the x values that would allow each of these brackets to be equal to 0. So let's write this. We'll split up the bracket. X minus 3 is equal to 0. X plus 4 is equal to 0. And then we're just going to isolate x on either side. So here, if I'm adding 4, I would want to subtract 4 on both sides. So the first one would be equal to negative 4. Over here, we're subtracting by 3. So we would add 3 to both sides. So the second x-intercept, or the second 0, would be equal to positive 3. So these are our zeros. If I wanted to write it as an x-intercept, this would read as 3 and 0, and this one would read as negative 4 and 0. So again, we can check on Desmos to see how accurate it is. So if I'm plotting this parabola, I know that this a value is negative, so I know it's going to open down, and it's going to hit it at these two spots, at negative 4 and at positive 3. So let's check on Desmos to see if we'll actually get that. So let's remove this function. You could actually leave it there if you want. And we'll type in y is equal to negative 2. I'll add my first bracket, which is x plus 4. And then I would add my second bracket, which is x minus 3. And then here you can see my parabola. I'll zoom out a little bit, but it is opening down with this vertex. And then if I just zoom in a little bit and click where the x-intercept should be, those are the two values that we algebraically calculated.